So, I'm back. And this is the J Show. You're still locked into the J Show. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning here in Barbados. I'm having trouble sleeping. But, you know, as I said, this is a completely unscripted show. And the Parkers just crossed my mind. What is The Parkers? The Parkers is a show that aired from 1999 to 2004. It starred the lovely Monique, the excellent Countess Fawn, Dorian, Dorian Wilson, yeah. It was a great show, and I love The Parkers. Like, I love comedy. I love comedy. My favorite genre of shows to watch is somewhere in between comedies and children's shows. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I like wholesome stuff. I like wholesome, fun shows, and The Parkers is a show that I can watch over and over and over again. There's something about the cast of that show that just marries together so well. You can tell that they had a great time making the show. You can tell that they really enjoyed doing what they did as they went to the set each and every day to film episodes of that show. But there is also a problem with the Parkers, and that is the representation of Nikki Parker or Miss Parker. One of the most disappointing endings ever was where Miss Parker got her man. Miss Parker finally wore down Professor Ogilvy to the most desperate level. And he realized that he had some form of feelings for her at the very last minute, and they got married. I hated that episode, by the way. I despised it. It came because they weren't expecting to be cancelled as yet. And I understand that. I get that. But it sucked. Like, I believe, don't get me wrong, I believe that a plot twist with Nikki Parker becoming Nikki Ogilvy could have worked if it had more development. If there was just more development in the way that it was done, it would have worked out wonderfully. And this is how I would have rewrote the coupling of Nikki and Professor Ogilvy. I think we, as the viewer, needed time to see a development in the relationship between the two. Now, there was an episode where they finally had sex, but after that moment, we found that Professor Ogilvy was still antagonistic towards Nikki, which didn't really endear us in regards a relationship between the two of them. Right? So we are stuck in this place where we know that, in all fairness, Nikki is Professor Ogilvy's antagonist. Antagonist meaning that she's the person who really kind of grinds his gears. She is loud, obnoxious, rude, and she doesn't really consider his feelings in certain cases. In the first season, though, we had glimmers that Professor Ogilvy could warm up to Nikki. And I believe that could have remained as a subtle underscoring of the show, much in the vein of Amen, another show that I love from the late 80s, early 90s. Now, the way that Amen was done, I cannot remember the name of the characters in Amen. Remember, this is right off the top of my head. This is an unscripted podcast. But the relationship between the Reverend and the deacon's daughter was done in such a sweet way. And yes, the deacon's daughter had to wait a long time for the Reverend to marry her. And yes, she played a bit of an antagonist role as well. But we could tell that there was a lot of care and a lot of compassion that went into that relationship. Now, I have been a Nikki Parker in my lifetime. I have been like that. You know, like when you love hard and you don't know how to express your feelings properly, you can become like that. So I understand exactly how a female can become that way, and I know that they mean well. And I think that could have been represented a bit more within the Parkers. They had excellent writing on the show. The comedic timing and the writing was pretty good. So I believe that with a bit more time and a little more planning, they could have had a very believable relationship form between Professor Ogilvy and Nikki. And it would have been hilarious, but yet enjoyable. It really did feel rushed. The finale episode, the way that they brought them together, just felt rushed and out of place. I think that they could have done a finale episode that flashed a little ways into the future, even. And then they could have had us being introduced to the newly married, or to the couple, you know, the lovely couple, that being Mr. and Mrs. Ogilvy. And that would have been a great way for them to then focus the entire episode over how they eventually got together. You know, they could have created a whole timeline where they get together. And that would have been awesome. But they didn't. And I think the Parkers really, really dropped the ball on that one. They really, really did. And I've also been watching a lot of Taina. In fact, before I decided to record this third episode, I was watching Taina. And there was a relationship that was set to occur between Lamar and Taina. And by the way, as I said before, you should really watch Taina. It is up on YouTube. There's a channel called Taina Morales, and you can watch every single episode of Taina, all 26 episodes. It's there, it's free, it's legal. Go and watch Taina. The music slaps, that the comedy is awesome, the chemistry between the cast is incredible. Just go on and watch it, man. If you enjoyed That So Raven and you liked Victorious, you are going to love Taina. Anyhow, so Lamar and Taina were supposed to get together. They never got the chance to, due to Taina being unexpectedly cancelled before they could film their third season. But now that I'm talking about sitcoms and it's an open floor kind of conversation, I believe that a more interesting storyline could have occurred between Lamar and Renee. Now, for those that haven't watched the show, Renee always picks on Lamar. Like, he doesn't even have to be doing anything, and she automatically picks on him. And I found through watching the show that the actors, Chris and Kalia, they had a lot more scenes together because their comedic timing, their chemistry was just solid. Like, I didn't get the same chemistry between Christina Vidal and Christopher Noyes. I just didn't. I didn't feel the same energy. But with Chris and Kalia, they definitely hit it off. You could tell through watching the show that they hit it off behind the scenes. That their personalities really did meld together. Just by the way they interacted with each other. And I believe that could have been a great storyline. I think that if they continued Taina, this is what I would have done. If I was the writer for Taina and they continued, I would have dropped the whole storyline of Chris and Taina getting together. And I would have introduced a new storyline where Renee has to wonder if she actually has feelings for Lamar, and where Lamar has to question if he actually has feelings for Renee. I think it would have been pretty cute, honestly. No, there was an episode where Renee kisses Dan and she has a whole crush on Dan. But then that ends with her not feeling anything more for Dan. It looked as if they were going to push the two together. Like they were going to push Lamar and Taina together, and they were going to push Dan and Renee together eventually. But I would broke a lot apart. I really would have. I think that there was a lot of potential there for Renee and Lamar. They had great, as I said before, they had great comedic timing. And there always seemed to be like it's weird because the show is skewed towards a slightly younger audience. But they had like a bit of a sexual tension, I must say. Like the banter was playful, but Renee talks about Lamar a little too much for her to not have a crush. Like, looking back on it, and as I said, you need to watch Taina. Looking back on it, like, she liked Lamar. I am convinced that she liked Lamar. Okay? I think he liked her too. I believe that they just didn't want to confront it, or they just didn't understand the feelings that they had for each other, being a bit young. But I think they liked each other. I really do. Like they were always quick with the comebacks. It's late, y'all. It's late. If I slur my words a bit, it's late. But they were always quick with the comebacks at each other, and I know that they were starting to frame the story more so as a brother and sister relationship. I could sense that through the writing. But it would have been great for a romantic relationship as well. Like, oh my god, the possibilities. Like, they could have slowly introduced it to us. They could have even had a case where Lamar does get to date Taina, but then he realizes that it isn't all that it cracked up to be, and Taina and Lamar break up. And then Renee starts to sense that she has feelings for Lamar. Like, oh my god, that would have been so epic. But because it was geared towards like the 8 to 15, 16 crowd, it would have worked. Okay, so like Lamar and Renee could have been questioning if they should explore the feelings that they're developing for each other. But they decide not to do it because of the respect for Dan and Taina. Ooh. But, like, with some time, Taina and Dan both realize that Lamar and Renee belong together. And they actually give the friends their blessing so that they can start dating. Like, and I did enjoy seeing them together. Like, there was an episode where they were playing the role of mother and son. And honestly, I know that they were playing a mother and son role, but when they said the lines to each other, there was a lot of love there. Like, and I know that the show was framing it as a brotherly, sisterly love, but I could easily see them exchanging lines about their feelings for each other and it being very natural. I could see it. Like, the way that Lamar rested his head on her shoulder and they just sat there all cuddly, and Oh my goodness. And they would have looked so cute together as well. Oh! And I low key believe that Lamar had more in common with Renee than with Taina, and it would have probably been a more solid relationship due to the fact that they would see each other for the way they really are. Oh my gosh. I mean, in the first episode of this podcast, I discussed my crush on Chris Knowings, who plays Lamar. Like, let's get back into Lamar for a minute. Lamar speaks to me as a character because he seems so realistic. Like, I think everyone back in that time frame knew a Lamar. He's a bit dorky, a little bit geeky, but still cool. Like, he's still a bit suave. Like, he's a geek, but there's a suaveness about him at the same time. He doesn't neglect his fashion sense. He isn't lacking in street smarts or the ability to give a witty comeback. He's reliable, he's solid, he's friendly, he's chill, he's cool. Like, I know Lamars in my life. I do. I've met people that look similar to him and have a similar vibe. Oh my goodness, he's such a well-written character. Like, I love the fact that he's so obviously, a teenage boy. But he's a well-rounded character. Like, he isn't trying to be so hip-hop and cool. He doesn't seem watered down to the point where he's acting white. He doesn't seem nerdy to the point where it is annoying. He's obviously intelligent, but in a cool way. Like, he's just sweet and cute. You just want to hug him. You want to pat his head. You want to. And I think it's just something about Chris Knowings' face. And here we go again. Me discussing my crush on Chris Knowings. But in watching the show, and even in watching Sesame Street, because he plays Chris on Sesame Street, his facial expressions, like, he has such a naturally expressive face. And I went on a Chris Knowings binge and I saw him in Crooklyn. And I saw him in New York Undercover, and his face has always been very expressive. He just has an extremely expressive face. Like, my goodness. And his voice as well is just, it's not the deepest voice, but he even sounds friendly. Okay? He sounds friendly. Oh my gosh. Like, he reminds me a lot of my partner as well. Like, I guess that is just the combo for me. That, like, Sweetie has a song saying, "That's my type. That's my type." I guess that's my type. It's probably my type. Like, whew. If I was in that universe, I would want to date Lamar. I never understood why Renee was dissing Lamar like that. I never got why Taina, like, come on. Lamar was cute. And, like, they dressed all of the characters super well. And because the early 2000s aesthetic is coming back, their clothes would still be kind of current to today's standard. But, like, the clothes were colorful and they fit each of their personalities well. And I guess the people who casted Chris Knowings in Sesame Street watched Taina because he's always in layers. If you ever watch Sesame Street, you'd realize that he's mostly in layered shirts. Like, there's a shirt, there's a t-shirt, and then there's a shirt underneath. And they're always colorful. But it suits him. Like, he looks cool without trying too hard. Like, One thing I didn't like though was the fact that Taina kind of used Chris's. Oh my god. Guys, it is 1:14 in the morning. I'm sorry. Lamar's feelings. Like she manipulated his feelings, man. And I didn't like that. That wasn't cool. That wasn't cool. It wasn't nice. I didn't respect that. Taina had to know, like, Taina had to have known that Lamar liked her. And she just took advantage of that. And I didn't, that wasn't cool, man. At least Renee saw Lamar as more of a friend, like Lamartian. So I believe Renee would have actually had a more balanced view of Lamar. But, ooh. Another relationship that comes out of left field, but that could have really worked, would be Lamar and Maritza. And I'm telling you guys, you need to watch Taina to be able to understand what I'm talking about, to be able to get into the conversation and really get it. But Maritza was the antagonist to the group, like the real antagonist to the group. But she was still a friend. And there was an episode where, I almost said Latangela, because Latangela is the actor's name, but where Maritza kisses Lamar. Now, we can interpret that however we want, you know, but, well, let me give you the reason that she kissed him, though. It was to prove a point, you know. There wasn't any, like, sudden feelings or anything like that. You'd have to watch the episode to understand. However, seeing that let me know that Maritza wouldn't be opposed to getting a little taste of Lamar for herself. And interestingly enough, in the episode in Espanol, she actually saves Lamar from embarrassment, in a sense. There have been multiple times where she saved Lamar from embarrassment. And I can see it working. I honestly can. I think that Lamar would be the perfect person to build up her self-esteem. Because even though she came across as a girl with huge amounts of self-esteem, I believe that was a front in some cases. I think Lamar would have been a great person to taper out her edges and just help her to be a bit more settled. Lamar would have been a great person to really teach her how to be less selfish and more balanced. And I think that part of her thought that Lamar was cute because, let's face it, he was. Like, oh my gosh. He was cute. And I think the casting for these characters was just on point because Lamar, even the name Lamar sounds like somebody that you would have met within your neighborhood. But Lamar just had this whole approachable, cute guy vibe down pat. Like, guys like Lamar grow on you. And my partner looks kind of similar to Lamar. Not completely similar, but they have the same kind of aesthetic in terms of having a bit of size, having approachable faces, nice personalities, nice sounding voices. He has a personality that reminds me of my partner. And I love my partner a lot. So there you go. As I said before, that's my type. So where was I? Oh my god, where was I? Right. So the casting decision when it came to Chris Noyes as Lamar was so on point. It's like, because I'm 22. Can I get a little adult here? Yeah. He like, us black girls, some of us like a little meat on our guys. And he had a little meat on his bones. But he had a nice smile as well. And he was geeky, but like still cool. So he looks like a guy that would give you good hugs, a back rub. Like, as I said in the first episode, I could see why Sesame Street saw Chris Knowings as a good fit. Because even just looking at him, he looks friendly. He looks like he could be a teacher. He does. He looks like he could be a kindergarten teacher. He looks like... And it's probably because I'm associating him with Sesame Street, but he does give off those vibes. And as I said, I went sleuthing through his Twitter. And the personality that he has shown within his characters is his personality. He is a cool guy who's slightly nerdy, but cool. Okay? So, yeah. Well, if there's anything we've learned through this series of podcasts is that I have a huge crush on Chris Knowings. But yeah, I really think that Renee and Lamar would have been great. Back to the Parkers and what they did wrong when it came to Professor Ogilvy and Nikki. No, Nikki and Professor Ogilvy actually had a lot of time together where they could have developed a genuine bond. They were friends, okay? Like, by the time the 5th season came, we understood that they were friends. But the problem was with the characterization of Professor Ogilvy. Part of the comedy was in the fact that no matter how hard Nikki tried, Professor Ogilvy just wasn't into her. That was a part of the humor of it all, right? So then, having Professor Ogilvy suddenly confess his love, while at the same time never showing a change in his feelings for her, kind of ruined the vibe. I'm not gonna lie, it spoiled the vibe, okay? Because it came out of left field, man. Ugh. I think another good ending for the show would have been just to let Nikki move on. For her to see the error of her ways and move on with that cute guy. That, like, the guy that they had Nikki about to marry was fine. Yet, they had a big steps. Well, it is late, guys. It's 1:22. I'm a bit of an insomniac, which means I don't sleep as much as I should. But I'm gonna try to end this podcast here. It's been fun. So we've had 2 podcasts that predominantly feature Chris Knowings. And we've had 1 more serious podcast, and this one which was a lot more lighthearted. I'm gonna check you guys tomorrow. And another podcast is going to be up. I'm going to post podcasts pretty regularly here because I have a lot to say. If you want to listen, you can give it a listen. This is just for fun. There's no real goal with this podcast yet, except for me to have some fun and share my views to the world. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you've been tuning in, this is the J Show on Anchor FM. I'm signing out.